Welcome back to the Truck Show podcast, recorded from the pod shed here in lovely Huntington Beach, California. I hate to start our show off with a negative, but this one is worth talking about. Our good friend Rich Holdaway from Holdaway Construction, you might know him as Rich from Hollister. He suffered a devastating fire this past week and took out his business and his shop. And if you remember Rich has been one of the OG listeners. He's always leaving messages on the 5-star hotline, and he had come down to help us finish out the pod shed so that we could keep the podcast going after we transferred from Motor Trend to my backyard. So Rich has been a very good friend of the show, and I just wanted to shout him out, let him know that we are thinking about him, that we are praying for him and his family and his business. And there is a GoFundMe. I put it on the Truck Show Podcast Podshed Insiders group page, but in case you want to look for it, this is how you find it. Go to GoFundMe.com and then just search Help Rich Rebuild His Beloved Construction Shop. Or if you look for Rich Holdaway, it'll come up on there as well. But again, the link has been posted in the Podshed Insiders group. So, Rich, hang in there. We know this is a terrible time and a bad setback, but in every tragedy comes a blessing, and we know you're just going to be fine. Rich is one of the kindest, most generous people you'd ever want to meet, and good people will rise again. They always do. So just a little bit of love for our friend Rich Holdaway out there in Hollister, California, and if you can support him and help get his business back up and running, I'm sure he would greatly appreciate it. All right, so let's talk trucks. I know that's why we're here, and I've got a guest for you full of truck knowledge, which we'll get to Chris in a few minutes. But this time when I say let's talk trucks, I want to do it for my driveway. I'm getting serious about leasing a truck to be my daily, keep the miles off the 392, and that way I can keep it fresh for adventures and not have those miles on the hot rod for the 2-minute trip in the morning when it's cold to drop off at school or something like that, or the grocery store. So there's some things that I want. I have an idea of the direction I want to go, but I don't want to give it all up at once. I wanted to throw out to you my thoughts, some of my research, and then I'm curious what you guys think about it. So here's kind of my must-haves. Must be a 4x4. Should be pretty efficient for daily driving with good range. I want an upgraded screen and stereo. Comfortable enough to fit the family and all of our gear for softball or things like that. This is not going to be my off-roading rig. This isn't going to be, maybe we go camping down a dirt road type of a thing or go up to the property, but this is the around-town car. It's got to be maneuverable enough to drive in the city, ability to tow and haul. I'd like at least 1,200 pounds and 6,500 pounds of towing. That way I can yank projects around. Some of my non-negotiables, it has to have adaptive cruise control. It has to have home link. And it has to have heated seats for my back. And it should have a rear locker, limited slip, along with all-terrain tires, or even better, an off-road package. So that stuff aside, I don't need it to be crazy optioned. I don't need leather seats, and I don't need a sunroof, things like that. I want spray and bed liner, of course. I want, any LED lights or bed lighting. Those are all things that I want. So originally I was looking at mid-sized trucks. The Gladiator was at the top of my list, for example. I've got the Mopar one, came back for a visit. I'll have it for a little while as we put some more stuff on it. And that's the one with the 2-inch lift and 35s. And I haven't had it for, I guess, since Moab. And I got into it the other day. I'm like, man, I just love this thing, right? It's fun to drive. It's cool. I enjoy it. And they've had great lease deals on them for a while. But those lease deals and that lease support has kind of gone away, and the Gladiator's got a little bit more expensive. And so I'm looking at the price of what it would be, monthly with whatever the budget I'm looking at. And I'm like, there's some other things at that price point that are less off-road and more refined, and I might be okay going into that direction because I have my off-road machine. And I really kind of love the Ranger Raptor, but it's just prohibitively expensive on a lease. They sell every one they can make, so they're not helping you out there. And I really don't need another performance vehicle. So then it comes down to I don't need a luxury truck. I don't need a full performance off-road vehicle. And so I was looking around. GM midsizers. Massive improvement over the old generation, but I still don't love the Turbo 4. It's a little bit laggy, and there's some trans latency, especially on the models with bigger tires. And then when you get up to the really good models, like a AEV Bison Edition, it has the shocks. It's got the tires. But again, it's almost too off-roady for this particular mission that I'm talking about. And you're getting up there in the, high 60s, $70,000. And I'm not spending that kind of money for a daily for the next 2 to 3 years. Then you get the Ford Ranger. They're pretty proud on pricing, and endless option packages can make it really expensive really fast. The new 2.3-liter Turbo 4 drives great. I've driven it in the Bronco, and I like it a lot. And they do have the Turbo 276. So that's kind of interesting. But you have to, the lower models have things like, a keyed ignition. I know you guys are thinking, well, this is stupid. But if you're going to pay the money, give me the push button, right? Looking at the Toyota Tacoma, I don't want to be pushed into a hybrid. I'm not interested in hybrid, and I'm just not a fan. I've driven Mike Rice's Toyota Tacoma, and I don't love the seating position or the dash. You're spending a lot of time on the inside. It just feels down market to me, and I just without the right wheel and tire package and in the range that I would probably afford a Tacoma, it still kind of looks like a rental. And then I go to Nissan Frontier Pro 4X, great truck. A little bit more expensive on the leases, but I love the durability. I love the comfort. And then, again, back to Gladiator. Those lease deals went away, and there's a lot of capability, but are there other trade-offs that might be too similar to the 392? So I started looking at prices, and then there's the half tons. And I'm like, you know what? I haven't really considered a half ton. I think it's too much truck. But there are some incredibly generous lease deals to be had in that space right now. And there's a lot of great trucks out there. So Ford has employee pricing right now. I'd go Coyote if I did F-150. But you can easily option XLT close to $70,000. So that's, again, not in budget. Even a lightly optioned 5-liter 4x4 truck is in the mid-60s. Another option might be a V8 Silverado 1500. The Z71 LT Trail Boss is pretty nice, and there's actually a lot of value. There, low 60s on that before you get into discounts and incentives. And then I looked at Ram, and I find myself drawn to the Bighorn, especially with the Night or Backcountry package and the Hurricane standard output 3-liter. If you guys remember, I had a Rebel standard output 3-liter when they first came out, and I did a test here on the podcast, and I couldn't believe how quiet, how smooth, how nice it drove. I didn't even know I had the standard output until I opened the hood. I wasn't sure what engine was in there. It's efficient, powerful, quiet. And there's some good deals to be had. And obviously, I've got some ins over there. Of course, I've got a great dealership with my friend Jackson Ellis Family Stores in Glendale, California. So that might be an option. So decisions. What's the truck guy to do? Let me know what you think by sending us an email, truckshowpodcast@gmail.com, or leave us a message on the 5-star hotline, 657-205-6105. And I'm curious, what do you guys think? A truck that fits kind of those parameters, middle of the road, nicely equipped, roomy for the family, good mileage and range, nice daily driver. It's got to look cool too. I don't want it to look like a rental car. I want to be proud of something that I'm driving every day. It's just how I am. All right, enough armchair truck buying. Let's get on with the show and meet Chris Picconi from Classic 4x4 to talk about the collector truck market. But before we get into it, let's thank the companies that make the Truck Show podcast possible. The Truck Show podcast is proudly brought to you in partnership with AMSOIL, the maker of the best synthetics and the same ones we use in our rigs. Did you know AMSOIL is more than just synthetic oil? They also make some of the finest lubricants, greases, additives, filters, and car care products. Oh, and even merch. We use AMSOIL products to protect our rigs, and you can do the same by heading to truckshowpodcast.com and using our special link under the featured products section. Looking for a knife? Then point your browser to kershaw.kaiusa.com and explore their line of exceptional pocket knives. They have a huge selection of quality knives from EDCs and ones made in America. And yes, even automatics. Score one for yourself today. If you want to treat yourself to the latest in adventure, gear, and upgrades for your vehicle, go to OVRMag.com and use the code @TruckShowPodcast for a discount on print or 1-year access to our digital library for free. Please help me to keep the Truck Show podcast free by supporting our sponsors and leaving reviews on Apple or Spotify. And don't forget to check the TruckShowPodcast.com website for the latest deals.
The Truck Show. We're gonna show you what we know. We're gonna answer what the truck, 'cause truck rhymes with the Truck Show. We have the lifted, we have the lowered, and everything in between. We'll talk about trucks that run on diesel, electricity, and on gasoline. The Truck Show, the Truck Show, the Truck Show. Oh, oh.
It's the Truck Show with your hosts, Holman.
Yep, that's me. And I want to welcome to the show Chris Picconi. So Chris is a guy that knows the collector market for trucks inside and out, especially classics. And we had a fantastic conversation about collector vehicles. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Chris Picconi. All right, I'd like to welcome to the Truck Show podcast, Chris Picconi from Classic 4x4 and classic4x4.com. You may have seen him on such things as industry insights for the classic truck market or his podcast, which I guess you're not doing anymore. Is that true?
It is true, Sean. Thank you so much for having me on the Truck Show podcast. Unfortunately, after several great years of hosting the Classic 4x4 podcast and also listening to the Truck Show podcast and other truck-focused podcasts, unfortunately, just the business got too busy. Classic 4x4, where I advise more and represent the sale of collector trucks and 4x4s for my clients. Just the business got too busy, and I don't need to tell you how much time, dedication it takes to not only just schedule and host and edit,
find content,
and publish a podcast.
I mean, even just doing like my Photoshop, for doing the tiles that go up online, and you think of all the arc of everything involved in podcasting, which starts from I have a hosting service and I have whatever licensing and equipment that I have. Oh, and then I have to find people, and then I have to record it, and then I got to edit it together, and then I've got to put a description together, and then I got to go to my back end, and I have to upload it. By the way, uploading I got to do it with the transcript. I got to do it with photos. I mean, there's a lot to it. And right now, I'm just a one-man band. So, it's a struggle. But I still love doing it. I think if I didn't love doing it, I wouldn't be doing it anymore.
And the good thing about hosting a podcast, too, is, especially myself as a former podcast host, if we get to see the metrics on the back end and what people actually listen to. And the fact of the matter is, yes, I had some amazing guests throughout, the several years I hosted the podcast, but everybody was really listening to, and I quickly realized what people wanted to hear from me is about the collector trucks and 4x4 markets, the trends, what's hot, what's not. And so I'm still doing quarterly market update and outlook episodes, and I'm posting those to YouTube. So for all the listeners out there that are interested, you can check out my YouTube channel and listen to those on a quarterly basis. So that's still out there, just no longer doing bi-weekly and monthly interviews anymore.
Well, we're going to get into all that because the collector truck market is off the rails right now, and some in confusing ways and some in ways that you totally get. But first, we got to play the jingle.
It's the inside job, baby. Yes, it is. It's the inside job now. It's the inside job, baby. It's time for you to share what you do.
So we talked a little bit about what you do, but the collector truck market, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like the market had always been around, let's say, Bel Air Chevys and Mustangs and Camaros, and then it kind of really started growing around that muscle car era because a lot of baby boomers who grew up with that as their high school car were able to go back. Then Rustomodding really got into the picture rather than recreating the classics with OE parts or saving survivors. And all of a sudden, everybody's buying these $150,000 Mustangs and then Camaros, and then the Mopars came alive, and so was this cottage industry, and they started buying up all the cars. And then all of a sudden, the 67-72 Chevys and the 67-72 bump side Fords really started taking off, along with Broncos and Blazers. And my feeling was, because the muscle cars were gone, that era was like because there's so much part sharing. You still have the same V8 engines, rear wheel drive, a lot of the same transmissions. That was like the last place to affordably get that type of muscle car driving experience from that era of vehicle. Well, those things are drying up now, and it seems like in the past year or two, the things that are blowing up are square body Chevys. You get into the 80s and that Land Cruisers, 70s or 60s and 80 series. And now, most recently, mid-80s to early 90s Toyota 4x4 pickups. I've seen some of them go on some of the auction sites for like $50,000 plus. I mean, let's talk about the craziness that's happening out there in the classic vehicle market.
Well, so you actually alluded to something that you hit the nail right on the head with, is the biggest driver in the collector vehicle markets in general is generational change. And, back in my parents' generation, they liked your European sports cars and those things, got really expensive, and then they lost interest or stopped collecting, and demand waned, and now they got kind of cheap. And then muscle cars, came into play with the previous generation, and now, interest is starting to wane, and people are getting older, and those are starting to get cheap. But, the demographic right now, that 35 to 55 demographic, is what is purely driving the collector truck and 4x4 markets, that generational change. And we just all want to own what we, saw looking out of our parents' station wagons in the 70s and 80s. And now that we have the ability we're getting into our prime earning years, we have that discretionary income. What are we buying? Collector trucks and 4x4. So that's really the biggest driver behind the segment, because the collector truck and 4x4 segment is absolutely leading the collector vehicle market, hands down, no question.
You literally cannot overstate the amount of that emotion has when it comes to buying a collector vehicle or a classic vehicle. I mean, it's what you remember. It's the feeling you had. It's maybe the envy you had in high school of a friend who had a certain vehicle, or good times you had in the back of the pickup truck, or somebody was at a truck show. You see the mini trucks starting to come back. Even some of the survivors that were, body dropped and had a pass through from the 90s. You'll see those pop up every once in a while. Vehicles that were just put together by some kids are now like coveted if they're original. And you still have shops that are trying to replicate that vibe from that era. And you look at the square body Chevys, and those things have really, OBS Fords have kind of come on in maybe the past 10 years, but the square body Chevys in the later versions of those lately, it's crazy. And then you start getting into the 90s trucks, which I think now are just sort of coming on, because you can still get a really good deal on like a Ram SRT10 Viper truck. And those things have been proven to be able to drive 100, 150,000 miles, no problem. They've actually been incredibly reliable. You look at Ford Lightnings, you look at 454 SSs, you look at Night Editions. Those like 90s trucks are kind of like the leading edge of what's coming into a classic that's still fairly affordable. You can still get deals out there. There's not the craziness around it, but man, you get a let's say 86 Toyota 4x4, or you get a Toyota 4x4 V6 extra cab in really good condition, under 50,000 miles, and then you're starting to see, like, even if you did inflation for what that vehicle would cost today, what they're going for in the collector car market is insanity.
It's supply and demand. When there's limited supply and more demand, prices are going to go up. And you hit the nail on the head with where I think the best value opportunities are. Ford OBS have been, trading at decent numbers for a while, but the GMT 400, GM K1500, K2500s, they've been appreciating. They definitely have been appreciating the past couple of years, but I still see some value opportunity, especially with the crew cabs. Any crew cab pickup truck right now is just absolutely on fire. But if you can find a GMT 400 crew cab, there's still value. You can get that, somewhere in the 20s, low 20s, whereas a comparable OBS crew cab is going to be in the 50, 60, 100 grand.
Especially if it's a diesel with under 100,000 miles. Those things, you get a 7.3 Power Stroke truck, the last of the OBS Fords, that's what, 95, 6, 7 right in there with the
97, last year.
So F250, first or second year of Power Stroke, under 100,000. Those things are going for new truck money all day long.
But overall, the market does ebb and flow. There are some soft spots in the collector vehicle market, and there's some trucks that are absolutely bonkers right now. Right now, Action Line, K5s, K10, K20s, which is 67 to 72 GM trucks, are just out of control right now. Absolutely out of control. And I can't even, every time I bring one to market, they're just
vapor, gone.
Weber, it's 3 to 5 calls through my insider list.
Yeah.
I don't want to use the word Rolodex because sometimes younger listeners may not know what a Rolodex is, but I'll run through some contacts and it's like 3 to 5 calls. And it's getting to the point where I'm just going to bring them to market.
Yeah.
And let the market decide, because why should I be deciding the pricing? Because I'm always low because the market's appreciating so quickly. But on the flip side, Gen 1 Broncos and Rest of World Defenders, ROW Defenders, are a little soft right now. Those are markets that got really overinflated.
Yeah.
You hit the nail right on it. It's saturated. They got saturated a few years ago, especially during the COVID craziness. And when things pulled back in 2023, they pulled back heavy and supply is outstripping demand.
Well, and I don't want to offend any Ford Bronco fans out there, and I'm not an anti-Ford guy or anti-Bronco guy at all. They're great. If you find a really clean Roadster or one with uncut rear fenders that is mostly original, you're going to get every bit of what it's worth right now. I think the issue came, prices got inflated because there were so many people jumped into the Restomod Bronco thing, and all the celebrities had to have one, and so all of a sudden these things are $150,000. Even with everything you could do to it, the best suspension, a Coyote swap, modern transmission, they still kind of drive like crap, and they're still an old Bronco. I mean, you can get into some of the trucks with a modern like Roadster shop frame or something, and it drives a lot like a modern vehicle. Broncos don't really, they're short wheelbase, they're really tall, they have a lot of, parts bin pieces that were fit together to push it out the door. They weren't made to be expensive vehicles. And because of that, even when you take apart every piece of, I've driven some of the most exclusively made, highest quality Broncos, and I was like, this is really cool. It is not worth the kind of money that is being asked for them or what people are paying. And then the other thing I'd say is one of the other vehicles that seems to be going insane right now, Land Cruiser 80 Series. That's another one where all day long, 250,000 miles, runner was a $9,000 to $11,000, maybe $12,000 buy. And now, if you can get a Lexus LX 450, which is a little bit nicer, a little bit better paint, a little bit nicer leather, and it doesn't have some of the things like the non-working power seats or cracked dash or things like that, and it has anywhere within a stone's throw of 100,000 miles, that's a $35,000, $40,000 vehicle. I mean, people are going crazy over those things, and it's interesting to me. I look at the old Land Cruisers, like the FJs, like FJ 45. Those were sort of the first ones to sort of get that real retro, retro mod kind of thing done to them. I feel like those have gotten a little bit soft, and also early Jeeps, I think, are still a value. There's a lot of CJ5s and CJ7s out there that if it's a common man package, it's not like the Golden Eagle or Levi's edition or something kind of oddball. I think there's still some deals out there. Flat fenders have gotten expensive, but they're still not prohibitively so when you look at the rest of the market. So, there are those pockets of places you could grab a deal if it's a vehicle that you want to build or that you have an attachment to.
And I'll talk about, to address your first comment with Resto Mods. Like, you look at it like there's nothing better than a Gen 1 Coyote swapped Bronco or an LS swapped Defender. Like,
yeah,
I was out in LA shortly after I saw you at SEMA not that long ago, and I was ripping a client's Coyote swap investment quality Gen 1 Bronco up through the Angeles State Forest, like through those, and it was amazing. But those are trucks that were trading a couple of years ago, 250, 350,000, which you can have in the mid hundreds right now. So value is always relative, right?
Sure.
If you look at it that way. But to address Land Cruisers and Toyotas right now, basically it's pretty simple. When it comes to Toyotas, if it is a petrol left-hand drive US spec Toyota with under 100,000 miles, just all bets are off when it comes to numbers. Like every time I think
full on gold mine moment, right? I've seen them all over the place. Like you'll see one, and it doesn't matter if it's a Land Cruiser, if it's a pickup truck, if it's a 4Runner, whatever it is. If it's Toyota, it's gas, it's US spec. I've seen them, the same vehicle, same era, similar mileage, similar quality, with like a $30,000 or $40,000 spread within weeks of each other on some of the auction sites. And I'm just like, this is crazy. And then you see some of the high prices going for these things that were like, your family, like, I don't want to say throwaway rig, but it was the one that wasn't too precious for you to take out and enjoy, right? But you have these survivors, and the prices are like, I think when somebody scores one, they get the game show music going.
Yeah, man. And I'll tell you the biggest score in the Land Cruiser market right now, which is every time the hammer goes down on one of these, I am just flabbergasted. And it's the 200 series Land Cruiser Heritage Editions,
oh, wow,
which were
yeah.
like 2020 to 2022 years only, the Heritage Editions. When one of those things comes to market with under 50,000 miles on it, six-figure territory all day long, hands down.
Wow.
I mean, that truck brand new, 5-6 years ago, 4 to 6 years ago, was an $85,000 truck. These things will do low six figures all day long. But the key is on any, it doesn't matter what it is. Any Land Cruiser, US spec, under 100,000 original miles is doing crazy. Whether it's an 80 series, 100 series, a 200 series, a 60 series, it's all doing. Mileage is everything for those.
I think Toyota did themselves a disservice by recreating the new Land Cruiser off the Prado and only having the real Land Cruiser be the Lexus in the US. So there's that nostalgia and there's that wanting by the market that says, I want a real Toyota Land Cruiser. Well, those 200 series Heritage Editions were the last and best of the bunch, right? They had all the accessories on it. I think they had wheels, a roof rack, they had the dark badging, things like that. And they kind of said this is our farewell one. So I'm not surprised. Toyotas in general, especially 90s, and I'll jump out a truck just for a minute because I was following one of these for a friend for a little bit and was blown away. A last generation 90s Supra turbo 2JZ car. Doesn't matter if it's automatic or manual. Manuals go for more. That car with 70 to 100,000 miles on it is a $120,000 car all day long. And if you get one with under 10,000 miles, that's in incredible condition, they're approaching like 200,000 for that car. And JDM is kind of coming in strong anyway right now. And the Toyota is reaping the benefits on the 4x4 side of that because there isn't really another player in that space, in the truck space. And I think people who can't afford the JDM cars are willing to take a shot at some of the JDM trucks.
Yeah, I mean, I see the value there, especially the JDM stuff because it's right-hand drive. Unfortunately, they're awesome. I love them, but that's two of the other soft spots in the collector truck and 4x4 markets right now, which is two-wheel drives are a little soft, like the older, pre-mid 60s two-wheel drive stuff. Yeah. And right-hand drives. Right-hand drives were just so popular.
They were huge for a while.
During COVID, they were just so popular, and they just the market has just kind of, ebbed and flowed out of right hands. Us Americans, we want our gas left-hand drive that we can go through the Starbucks drive-through, and we don't have to reach over to the other side. But you brought up a good niche, which I think is a great entry-level collector truck or 4x4, which is the CJs, right? The CJ5s, the 7s, the CJ8s, they're always strong, but they're great entry level. CJ5s, there's not a ton of upside, but you can get in them really, really at a great number. Like I'm talking, 10 to 15 grand. Yeah. CJ7s are always going to be resilient, and you can get really, really, really clean ones in the 20 to 25 grand realm. And if you love the rare CJ8s, that's really clean ones can go, in the 30 to 50 grand realm, which, as crazy as that sounds, under 50 grand in the collector truck and 4x4. Yes, that's as crazy. It's like under 50 grand in the present collector truck and 4x4 markets is a great entry level price point. Well, which is wild that we're even saying that.
No, totally. I think part of it with Jeep is there's a lot of them, and there seems to be more of an emotional connection to those because you probably were on your grandpa's property or something like that. Maybe it was the first car you ever drove because nobody cared if you ran it into a ditch or something or whatever, right? They were super overbuilt for their size and price class at the time. They're very simple. They're easy to work on. There's a cottage industry aftermarket surrounding all of those Jeeps, 5, 7s, 8s, even flat fenders. And so to me, they kind of feel like that steady. They're always just going to be solid, but they never really had like that super performance version or that super rare, other than a sticker and badge package. Maybe there are a couple things here and there. So the reality is one is almost as good as the other. Maybe looking outside of like, oh, I want a V8 or power steering and power brakes and air conditioning. There's not a lot of like functional difference between them all. You sort of can get one, and once you have engine, transmission figured out, and whether you want some of the accessories, winches or things like that, or you wanted air conditioning, which is silly on an open top Jeep, but you could get them back in the day. Those are really the only things that kind of matter. You can kind of make it your own. I'd say the downside of the Jeep market, and this is kind of goes into my next question for you, is the Jeep market is full of people that have modified over and over and over again. And so it goes from grandpa to dad to son, whatever, and everybody has their own sensibilities about what the vehicle can be. And now they went from 30s to 37s and coilovers and things like that. When you're looking at the collector truck market, these vehicles are getting old enough now where they've legitimately passed through 2, 3, 4 generations of owners. What happens with some of the builds that are the sort of period builds, like a Boyd Coddington 90s, drop Chevy, or something somebody had through their family and it got built and repainted and rebuilt and repurposed into something each time? Is there something to be said for patina anymore? Is there something to be said for survivors anymore? Does it matter that the car's gone through 4 personalities in its lifetime and maybe that's kept all the rust and stuff off it? What are your thoughts on the modification side of the collector market?
Yeah, it really depends on the vehicle itself. Like, Jeeps, we were talking about Jeeps, so I'll talk about those. Like, the more original a Jeep is, the more value it's going to hold outside of resto mods. Outside of resto mods, an LS swap with a 4L60 air conditioning, Dakota digital gauges. That's a whole different animal. But if it's got the 258 inline six, which is just, the most bulletproof engine there ever was. Those things will run with no oil and zero compression forever. Yeah. It's like the most wild, like lifter ticks, bottom end. It doesn't matter.
It's like the gas version of a Cummins. It doesn't care. It just keeps running.
It's the most wild thing, But if a 258 into a P176 is like it doesn't get better than that. All right, and I will say, the more original the body is, fiberglass bodies don't do well. But if it's an original steel body that isn't rusted, rotted out, same goes through the frame. And the more original it is, the more value it's going to bring to the table when it comes to Jeeps. But like, we'll talk about Land Rovers, right? Land Rovers is a different animal. Land Rovers, the more original is, the less value there is. The more modified it is, the more value there is to it. So
that's because they were so crappy in their original form.
Well, you said it. I didn't. You are correct.
Land Rover guys are going to be very angry. I remember the first time I drove one was when the Defender 90 came to the U.S. It was a yellow one, press fleet, and it had the old, GM-derived V8 in it. And I couldn't believe how bad the ergonomics were on it and that the steering wheel was off-center by a lot. And it was like just, and some people will say British charm, and I'll give you that. British charm is fun for your Sunday driver. British charm is not fun if it's something that you want to actually interact with on a daily basis. And I'm sure I'm going to get all sorts of crap for saying that, but it's the truth.
but you look at like Jeeps are they hold value being highly original because they're reliable. Well, the Land Rovers don't hold value because they're highly original because they aren't reliable, and people want reliability. Whether it's a R28 Cummins swap or an LS swap, like they do well. So it really depends. But at the end of the day, when I'm talking to clients and I'm working with buyers and sellers, and the one big theme that I really am hearing all the time right now is, we talked about resto mods, is people want to drive a truck that looks old but drives new. So modern powertrain, air conditioning, 4-wheel disc brakes, 4-link suspension, power locks, power windows, just touchscreen stereo, stuff like that. People want the modern conveniences with the older look, and I think that's what's driving the resto mod market in general.
Yeah, I would say that I agree with you, and I think people automotive technology in terms of creature features and comfort and capability and handling is so far above anything that was ever made back then. People are so used to or programmed to want that. They just want it to look old and cool. And so I definitely appreciate the rest of mods. I think there's like that SEMA show level quality, which is kind of, I guess, collector quality. But I like the ones that are drivers. I like the ones that people aren't afraid to take out and use and get on the road. And I definitely really appreciate that kind of resto mod build a lot. It's like, if you're going to change it, at least change it for the better. And I'm not an advocate of taking something that's nice and original or Survivor and resto modding it. But I am a fan of taking something that is probably going to go to the junkyard because it's pretty far gone and investing it and making that vehicle. Don't steal from and I get it. There's the argument of, oh, it's my money, it's my vehicle, do whatever I want. But I feel like these vehicles will hopefully outlast us, so we're just stewards of them for the period of time that we have them in our lives. So you have to honor them correctly. And I feel like there's only such a small pool of the originals and survivors. I'd rather not have to see all that's left in a museum. I'd love to see some of those at the car show and be able to interact with them in the real world. So don't chop up all those. Do the ones that are wrecked or ruined or are destined for the scrapyard. Resurrect those, bring those back into play, and I think that's a huge win for the classic car industry.
Well, you're a man after my own heart, because that's actually, I'm daily driving right now exactly what you said, which is a 1980 International Harvester Traveler, which is the long wheelbase wagon version from 70, built from 76 to 80. 1980 is the last year. But when I acquired this truck, I acquired it all original. The body had been done, but it needed everything else. And I got to the point where, so Mike Cashman at Mount Zion Off-Road does all the work on my personal collection. And Mike said, you know what, Chris, we got to rebuild this powertrain, or do you just want to LS swap it? And we made the decision actually to keep the original powertrain.
Wow.
The original,
look at you.
Hey, but listen to what we did though. So we kept the original IH 345 big block, V8, the Torque Flex 727 automatic trans, the Dana 44 front and rear axles, but and the Dana 300, which is a 1 year only option for the Scouts. Most of them had Dana 20s, but we chose, instead of swapping it, we chose to rebuild it, but then add fuel injection, 4-wheel disc brakes, update the suspension, heavy duty steering components. So on the facade, it looks like a pretty highly original truck, but when you're driving it, you do have a lot more of those creature comforts too.
Yeah,
with the originality.
I'm totally down with that. I think as you are telling the story, the collector market.
THANKYOU, thank you.
They want to thank you for not completely ruining it and making it your own for the time you have it. So you bring up an interesting point, and that's the Scout market. And Scouts have long been the bastard children of the collector car market, mostly ignored, mostly uncared for. Cool factor for those in the know. And it was almost like they had their little Scout world off to the side. And they're like, oh, yeah, don't tell anybody about us because we're kind of doing our own thing. And the vehicles are relatively affordable. Maybe the parts were a little bit more expensive because they're more rare. But all of a sudden, Scout's making a comeback in the OE world. What has that done for the Scout collector vehicles and that market? Because all of a sudden, people are remembering, oh, Scout, that's right. My uncle, my grandpa, whoever, they didn't have a Bronco. That wasn't a Blazer. That was something else. A Scout. I hadn't thought about that in years, and now they're starting to pine about Scout a little bit.
So, you brought up a good point, which is, we'll talk about the Bronco effect, right? And what that had on Gen 1 Broncos is, Ford brought about, reconceptualized the old school Bronco. It brought a lot of press to it. They launched it as a new vehicle, and then it brought a lot of interest in the Gen 1 Broncos. And that was really the biggest variable to the rising tide in the Gen 1 Bronco markets a couple years ago. And we're starting to see that Bronco effect that we saw several years ago take place today with the Scout effect, where the average casual enthusiast didn't even know what a Scout was a year or two ago. And now every call I get from my clients is, hey, Chris, you know what? I want to sell my ROW Restomod Defender or Gen 1 Bronco, and I want to buy a K5, K10 Action Line GM or a Scout. Right. So like anything, there's trends and they ebb and flow, but I think the Scout market has a lot of legs. We are going to see, and interestingly enough, Scout, Volkswagen Group, which owns the Scout brand, just delayed the launch of the new one from, it's supposed to be 2027. It's going to be 2028.
Yeah.
And that just gives the market more legs and gives the casual
people don't want to wait, right?
Exactly. So, I think, I've been daily driving one. I've had several Scouts in my collection.
They're good.
I've been daily driving one.
I know I bashed
years.
Yeah, I know I bashed the early Bronco build quality and things like that. I'm sorry. I still like them. I think they're cool as hell. I love them with Coyote swap, and they'll almost do wheel stands. Awesome. I drive a Wrangler 392. I get what it's like to have short wheelbase and a lot of power. Fun. But the early Bronco build quality, especially on the early versions in the 60s, just wasn't that great. Now you go over to Scout. Scout's a little bit different. Scout build quality was actually pretty good because it wasn't made by a normal OE car manufacturer. Scouts were made by an agricultural machinery company, international, and they had to survive the rigors of being on the farm, being on the ranch, and actually working.
Yeah, I mean, Scout International primarily made midweight and heavyweight trucks, and then also farming implements, stuff like that. But they made the light line trucks, starting with the Scout 80, going into the Scout 800, going into the Scout 2, and then eventually the Traveler and Terra. And they discontinued those in 1980. And sadly enough, there was some financial issues why they discontinued them. But the one big thing with Scouts is, and the biggest joke in the Scout community, is that they rolled off the line rusty.
Yeah.
They, that's the biggest.
So that must be the bodies, though, right? But like the componentry was solid, even if the body fell off the frame around you.
Oh, hands down, no question. The powertrains, like in my Scout, I still have the original wiring harness. I still have, I have a 46-year-old wiring harness, and everything works, every gauge, every light, everything. So the quality is definitely there. The only downside with the Scouts is the body is
what's better.
They do have some rust and rot issues.
In terms of rust and rot, is there a difference between the 80s and the Scout 2s? Was one better or worse than the other?
I think the Scout 2s, the Terras, and the Travelers were a little worse than the Scout 80s and 800s. Okay. But they were all still pretty rough. But if you're a Jeep enthusiast, you were used to that, so it didn't really matter.
Well, I'm coming from the standpoint of the Jeep side of the fence, so I'm thinking, hey, well, that looks pretty good over there.
Hey, at the end of the day, as far as the trends in the markets are concerned, there's an immense opportunity with Scouts, and I see those continuing to appreciate. If you own one, you're going to do well. If you're interested in buying one, now's the time to buy, because the market is going to continue to grow, like you said, and appreciate with that quote-unquote Scout effect as they bring the new Scout to market.
So what are some other, you mentioned a couple, but if somebody was getting in right now, and let's say they had a $50,000 budget to buy anything, and they didn't really care what it was. It's more of an investment. I want to buy this vehicle and park it in my showroom or something like that. Where would you send them? What year range and what vehicles would be a good starter for somebody, beginning with that kind of cash?
So there's probably two, and we already talked about one, which is the Jeeps. A CJ7, a CJ8, it's a great entry level. You may not see a ton of appreciation in the future, but you're really not going to lose on them. So I'd say a good clean CJ7, CJ8 is a great entry level right now. Again, you're not going to knock the cover off the ball. If you're looking to knock the cover off the ball, square body Chevys, like square body GMs and dent side Fords right now. So just as much as the action lines have really appreciated, and even get an action line GM with K5 or K10 or K20 below 50 grand that's clean is that's not realistic in this market. But you can really get a dent side Ford, especially look for an F26 VIN, F250 Highboy. You can still find some good, clean high boys under 50,000. I see an immense amount of opportunity there, but dense sides in general, I see a lot of opportunity. And square bodies, square bodies had a long run. Square bodies ran, man. So square body Chevys, ran for almost 3 decades, right? That's a pretty long run. So early square bodies, I'd say like the let's say like the kind of 75 to the 75 to 77, 78 realm. I still see some value there, but where I see the most value and the most appreciation, and
Can I guess?
Yeah, I want to hear it.
I would think that it would be the 89 range where you could get the kind of first round of fuel injected, especially on the 3/4 ton. So 2500, 454 fuel injected, suburban,
Sean,
especially.
You just absolutely nailed it. The late second jet. You just absolutely. I don't like. To all of our listeners out there, we didn't discuss this.
No, we didn't.
No, like you absolutely nailed it. The late. I by the way, I absolutely love the new music, but the late square bodies, which is really like 88 to 91, whether it's a K5 or so, and though we call them the K5s, the K10s in that period of time, technically GM did change nomenclature from C and K, which is the C is the 2-wheel drive and the K is the 4-wheel drive, to R and V. So the 88 to the 91 is technically considered the R or the V being the 4-wheel drive, the R being the 2-wheel drive, but enthusiasts, we still call them Ks.
Yeah.
But the late, where you got the throttle body injected, front, disc brake, ABS, by that point, air conditioning and power locks was pretty standard on most of the. Yeah, so like you have some creature comfort, so it looks older, but you do have those. And I had one of those in my collection that I bought on a whim a couple years ago at GAA. Just nobody was bidding on it, and ended up selling it for triple what I bought it for.
Wow!
Like 3 years later. Yeah, and I still see an immense amount of upside there.
So the reason I mentioned that is I remember the very first time. It was Easter morning. My grandparents, who had a trailer group that towed in retirement around the country, had an old Suburban. And they came and rolled into my parents' driveway on Easter morning with a 1989, with a brand new 89 GMC, not Chevy, so it's fancy, white 2500 Suburban 454, fuel injected, red velour, triple bench interior, loaded with power steering, power brakes, windows, door locks. Did not have power mirrors because it had trailer towing mirrors on it, and then they had like the long aluminum running boards on it. And that vehicle became a part of my life for a long time, whether it was my grandparents volunteering field trips because they could fit 400 kids in there, or my grandpa and I going somewhere with it, or me needing to tow a project vehicle to SEMA and him giving me the keys to the Suburban because it was the only thing in the family that could do it. And I never forget things I love about that truck. So as long as we're reminiscing here, it got 10 miles per gallon empty and it got 10 miles per gallon towing. It did not care. It just got 10 miles per gallon. I would go in the city. I would drive on the highway. I would put a trailer behind it. It was always the same, no matter what. That was amazing to me. Or within, 1 mile per gallon. And the other thing was that tiny, skinny, overboosted steering wheel and that big, flat hood that looked like it could be a helicopter landing pad. And I remember you'd take that thing and this was a 2-wheel drive, so it rode real soft, and you would drive it down 15, 2 fingers on the steering wheel, and it would just sort of like float and bob down the road. You need to pass somebody, no problem. You'd hear that I don't know what it was, probably I don't even think it was a 4L back then. I'm trying to remember what that would have been. I guess it was a Hydromax.
It'd probably be a 700 R4, which ended up becoming the 4L60.
Yeah, okay. So 700 R4, and then it would do that typical like big GM, kick down, and you'd be off to the races, and then shift back into high gear, and you just loaf back down along the road, right? It was just, there's something that everybody has their memory with their grandpa or with their dad or their uncle or somebody. to me, that's one of my favorite ones. Is that truck reminds me of a very specific point in time in my life, and I can still remember the squishy brakes, and I could still hear a 454 with TBI firing up to this day, and I can tell you what that is. And then you hear the fan, especially when the clutch, the viscous clutch for the fan, when it starts wearing out and the fan like roars to life, and you hear all that air coming through the radiator, and those things are just cool. And I remember my grandpa telling me one day that hey, how's your trip? He goes, yeah, it got hot. I'm like, well, how hot did it get? He goes, oh, it's seized. I'm like, what do you mean it's seized? He said the engine just died on the side of the road. And I go, what'd you do? He goes, oh, I just waited a while, it cooled down, I started up, we finished our trip. I'm like, well, how long? He goes, oh, the whole thing. We went a couple thousand more miles. I just changed the oil. I'm like, what? I mean, they're just indestructible, right?
And that is what's driving the collector truck market right now, is the fact that if you found that exact truck out in the market today, all that reminiscing would come back, and you'd pay every dollar you could possibly find.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, they're great trucks. I mean, I'm a big GM fan in general, outside of Jeeps, the other, I've had a lot of GMs in my collection. I love them. I wish I had more Fords in my personal collection, but I get to represent the sale of a lot for clients, which is fun. I've always been a GM guy. I don't know why.
I always get I was a Ford guy until I got into automotive journalism, and then I didn't become an anybody guy, because you're like, they're all great and they all have their flaws, and all that goes away. So one of the things that I think is funny is, even to this day, I'll hop in an OBS Ford, and you forget how small they are. Like, you're so used to today's F-150 and Super Duty, and they're such big trucks, and you get into an OBS Ford, and it almost, I mean, it's a little bit bigger than a midsize. But it's not much. And today's Colorado Canyon is not that far off from a GMT 400 in size, right? I mean, it's crazy how these vehicles have evolved. But I'll get inside an OBS Ford, and you kind of like look around, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot how tight these things are.
I mean, the modern trucks, I mean, you get into these things, and like, just between the distance between the driver's seat and the passenger seat is insane. The width has just gotten out of control. What's cool with the OBS Fords, though, is the length. I don't think we'll ever see that length anymore. An F-350 crew cab long bed. Oh man, I mean, I don't think we'll ever see something that long ever again in a passenger vehicle. But but the width is, I agree. Just vehicles in general have just gotten.
I remember a friend of mine, his dad had one of those, a white one, and I remember watching that thing through like the car line at school, and you're like, man, how does it get it through the parking lot? It's just like turning a battleship or something like that. I mean, they're massive.
Absolutely huge trucks, man. But they're great trucks. But that's where the opportunity is the OBS stuff, the early 90s stuff, GMT 400s, like that next gen, back to the generational change, and what drives the collector vehicle markets, especially the truck and 4x4 markets, is the next generation. Their classic vehicle was built in the late 90s to early 2000s.
So the question is, what's the vehicle? What's the next? Where are we going? What do you see on the horizon for the next desirable classic truck?
Dude, GMT 800s, definitely. GMT
by the way, I will say GMT 800 might be the best built GM truck ever. It is the perfect mix of comfort, modern, but the build quality was really good, and those trucks seem to be incredibly reliable. I like them better than the GMT 900s, and they were such a nice step up from the 400s. To me, a GMT 800 is really the sweet spot in the history of GM trucks, at least as we sit here today.
Once you passed the OBS years, so 1997 and further out with Fords got a little weird. You had the Tritons, you had, some really weird designs at that point.
Yeah.
So I really think GM did a better job in that period of time, in that like late 90s through, mid to late 2000s, especially with GMT 800s. And dare I say this, I might get crucified for it, the cat eyes. The GM cat eyes, right? I mean, there might be opportunity there.
For me, it's a boo. But it's funny, I talked to some of my friends' kids, and they love the cat eyes. And I thought when they came out, they looked stupid. I was like, that's dumb. But I don't know if it's because they're distinctive, they're a little bit weird. They look okay slammed. I don't know what the answer is, but I have seen a lot of younger guys that are probably in their 16, 18, 20-year-old are like, oh, dude, cat eye Chevy, super cool. And you're like, ugh.
But that's what they saw growing up. And it's, I was just talking to my, you talk about that age demographic. I was just talking to my godson, and he's about to turn 17 and get his license. And I was like, hey man, like, what are you thinking? And he's like, you know what I really want, Uncle Chris? He's like, I want a Tacoma, but I want like a fifth or sixth generation Tacoma, like something in like the mid 2000s. Like, I was like, really?
You have that kind of money, kid?
Yeah, well, that's what I don't think he realized. I was like, well, like with how many miles on it? He's like, like below 100. He's like, I'd like a 4-wheel drive Tacoma, like, a TRD off-road
That's
model.
Like a $25,000 truck at 100,000 miles all day long.
Well, it is, but I think he thought you could get it for like $6,000 to $7,000, which doesn't exist.
Well, here's the thing that's interesting about those trucks. So, I always tell people, and we've talked about on the show, we've spent a lot of time talking about Nissan Frontiers and Xterras. And when you look at that market, the Nissan was arguably a better built vehicle at the time, in terms of the Toyota has a C-channel rear frame, the Frontier's fully boxed, the Toyota had rear drum brakes, the Nissan had rear disc brakes, the Nissan had the 4-liter V6, and I think the better transmission at the time. But they didn't build as many of them. So you go back in history and you go, you know what? Everybody loved the Toyota. They're living off of Toyota reliability. They're a great truck. There's no doubt about it. But they're so overpriced. I always tell people, go find yourself an Xterra or a Frontier because it's in the same class. It's a peer, and they were cheaper and they didn't build as many. Whoa, was I wrong? You look at those in the secondary market now, and they're almost as expensive as the Toyotas. And if you can find a Nissan Xterra off-road with low miles, those are impossible to find, and they're every bit the dollars that a forerunner of that era is. And that's because I think people who buy in the first market are different than people who buy in the secondary market. And the secondary market has a little bit more research behind them because they know, oh, what's the maintenance cost? What's the reliability? What's all this? And they look at those vehicles different. And the secondary market has really been kind to the Nissan Frontier and Nissan Xterra of that generation. And they're a great beginner vehicle. Reliable, plenty of power, way overbuilt because they shared the F-Alpha platform with the Titan. And in my opinion, a better driving, I think, and in some ways a better truck. Maybe not quite the Toyota quality, but definitely you're not taking a flyer on one of those. They're great vehicles, and I think they show in the secondary market because they've gotten pretty pricey in the last few years, especially for the, it's basically the 05 to 20 or something like that, but kind of those mid, like, body on white was sort of the same throughout, a little bit of styling updates, but you look in that like late, 2000s, it's crazy the type of money a mid-sized 4-wheel drive Japanese pickup truck is commanding.
Even go a generation earlier than that with the hard body Nissans.
Yeah.
Oh, the hard body, and they're coming up right now. I mean, whether it's the pickups or the Pathfinders. They were a really weird styling.
Yeah, they had the handle on the C-pillar where the door was. Yeah.
And the front of them looked like they just like ran straight into a wall and like were flattened out. Yeah. But I got to tell you, I'm starting to see those things run up right now, especially the Pathfinders, again, with low mileage.
Yeah.
But talk about like the modern Toyotas versus Nissans. Like, and I will preface this statement by saying I am through and throughout a Toyota guy. I'm on my 11th TRD Pro that I'm driving right now as my other daily driver. Like I'm
they're
through
great.
And throughout.
You can't
TRD
go wrong.
Pros.
If you've got the money to spend, you can't go wrong.
and I've had them all: Tundras, Forerunners. I'm in a Sequoia TRD Pro with TRD Performance Pack right now. I mean, it's just amazing, right? But the Frontier Pro 4X is an amazing vehicle, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, but if you gave me the choice between a brand new Frontier Pro 4X or a brand new Tacoma TRD Pro, I'm going with the Nissan Pro 4X. I'm gonna be honest.
I'm not super impressed with the new Toyotas. I think they're kind of a caricature of themselves. I think there's some weird body lines and they look kind of weird with the way the tumble home is more upright on them when they go down the road. And the cheaper ones have a really bad wheel and tire package. They don't look cool until you get to the higher trims with the right wheel and tire package. I just don't like that, the higher trims, the Trail Hunter, the TRD Pros force you into the hybrid, when driving the manual Turbo 4 without the hybrid is a way better experience. But I just don't love the interiors. I feel like they kind of look like Legos. Like it's just not integrated. It doesn't look particularly modern in a good way. It just looks like a bunch of things got kind of pieced together. You go, oh, this looks rough and tumble. But the Tacoma buyer doesn't necessarily demand that, because if you look at the interiors for the past Toyotas, none of them have that. And I feel like they lost the trail a little bit in this redesign. And I don't hate them, but I'm just not in love with them. And you sit in a Nissan Frontier interior, it's great. And the truck looks great. Toyota's got a leg up on, wheel travel and probably suspension, but there's some things like the new Roush Edition, which gives it a lift and bigger tires, which helps out a lot. And I know Nissan is actively pursuing something to compete with the TRD Pro side. But you look at it, and to me, it's just such an underrated pickup truck. And it may not be the right thing for everybody, but man, that midsize truck market was dead, 12, 15 years ago. And now everybody has to have a midsize truck, and it's absolutely insane, the competition. And really everybody within the last few years has completely redesigned everything that's in that market. So for the first time in a long time, all of the midsize trucks are current.
And the sleeper in that midsize, the new recurrence of midsize trucks, is by far the Ford Maverick. The fact that you can get a crew cab that gets 40 plus miles to the gallon, and interesting, my neighbor, I saw, just brought this one home. It was a Maverick Tremor Edition, which I was like, the Mavericks, they don't have great eyes. They're very functional. Yeah. They work. But once you add the Tremor package on, I was like, wow, this thing's got eyes. And it still gets 40 miles to the gallon. It still is a
they took
truck.
Some of the stuff out of the Bronco Sport, like the rear drive unit and some of the off-road bits, and made it a little bit better. I love the Lobo. I'll tell you, the Lobo Maverick is badass, and I guarantee you there's one coming up soon with more than 250 horsepower, because Ford had one at SEMA with their sort of Ford accessory idea of what one would look like. And I think they're going to push hard for what they did. I wanted to hate the Maverick as just a small Ridgeline or a more, American styled, Santa Cruz. But the reality is I can't hate that truck. Is it unibody? Yeah, I don't love that, but for what it is, if you need a fuel efficient vehicle, but you need a little bit of truck capability, not a lot. Maybe it's your mountain bikes. Maybe it's a dirt bike. Maybe it's Home Depot runs. Maybe it's your surfboard and your wetsuit in a dirty cargo space kind of a thing. Or you have a small business and you need truck bed space. It's really hard to beat. It's comfortable. And the thing, I've said this on the podcast before, the thing about the Maverick is it was designed to be a cheap vehicle. And it's unapologetically an affordable vehicle. You don't feel like you've gotten into one and they decontented the crap out of, like, a F-150 XL is like trash. You get in one of those and every button blank is covered. There's like things missing, and it feels like they gave you half a truck. So you get in the Maverick, it doesn't feel like that. Like, it's funky. It's got like geometric shapes on like some of the trim. It's got the plastics are kind of, and they're like, hey, we're affordable and we're gonna have fun with it, and that's okay. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that it doesn't feel decontented to meet its price point. And it's a great driving vehicle. And as much as I want to hate it and be like, no, that's not a truck, I have to tell you, for the right customer, it makes a lot of sense. And I've driven them. I've loaded them at full payload. And I'm like, I still don't hate it. Ford did a really good job reinventing that entry-level truck space. And I got to hand it to him, because I was the number one guy saying, no, this is dumb. And Ford proved me wrong. I'll take my lumps on that.
Hey, and I agree. It's a lot of truck for the money, and it presents a lot more value opportunity than a Tacoma does, or a Colorado. But you want to know what's back to the collector truck markets. One that people are probably going to fall over when I mention this, that is getting wild value wise, is Ford Rangers.
Which era?
So the earlier the better, and 4-wheel drive. Right.
Okay.
The earlier and better, but those things were like 2 or 3 years ago were like $300 throwaway trucks.
Yeah. Totally.
If they're clean, a good clean Ford Ranger, especially V6 4-wheel drive, because a lot of them were 4-cylinder 2-wheel drive, but V6 4-wheel drive is coming up, and it's coming up big right now. And even the later generation, I was just in a client's collection a couple weeks ago, and he's like, "Oh, look what I just picked up." And it was, I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember the Stepside Splash
I owned
edition?
one.
No way.
I had a 94 Splash, 4-liter V6, automatic A4LD with 31s. It had the deer hoof wheels on it, TTB truck, 4-wheel drive. And it was black. I took all the Splash graphics off of it because I thought they were dumb. I put the later 98 style grill on it, which I liked better because the Ford was in the center and not up high like it was on my 94. And I ended up doing I think I did maybe 32s. I think I did 33s on it. Did a couple things here and there, but mine had the sport seats. And those trucks with the sports seats were like the seats out of the Mustang with like the adjustable leg support that came out, and you could get the adjustable lumbar on them. That truck was so cool. That was the first vehicle that I bought for myself with my own money, and I love that truck. Absolutely love it. So when you talk Rangers, I've owned a few of them in my day. That was the high school truck when I was growing up. My aunt and uncle had a couple for the ranch. So I get the Ranger, and I love them dearly.
The last time I saw a Stepside Splash edition was like my high school gym teacher drove one in like 1997. I hadn't seen one until a couple weeks ago.
Baywatch. Go watch Baywatch reruns from that era, and they have the yellow ones with the Baywatch lifeguard truck. Right. Yeah.
But I mean, it's wild that Rangers are coming up in the collector vehicle market, and there's an S10s, right? The Typhoons.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that's gonna be my next question. I was gonna give you some vehicles I mentioned earlier, but I want to know where they stand now. So Typhoon Cyclone, 454 SS, Ford Lightning, Ram SRT10. Those are sort of like the hot rod trucks from the OEs of their individual respective eras. Where do they stand in the collector car market today? Are they softening? Are they growing? Are they a good investment? Give me some insight into the OE sport truck.
So the 454s, which were on the GMT 400 platform, they're always going to be popular. Everybody loves them. And there's upside there. Where I see the most upside is Typhoons and Cyclones on the S10 Blazers and pickups. The Typhoons and Cyclones, if you can find, because a lot of those things were really ridden hard.
Oh yeah, and you build that many of them.
No, so when you can find those things clean,
especially the later years where they had white and red and burgundy, where there's minuscule production numbers on the non-black ones also.
And the SRT 10s, and I'll also talk about the Grand Cherokee SRT 8s, which came out in 06, and the Dodge Ram SRT 10s. They're not there yet because they're a little bit older of a generation in comparison to the Cyclones and the Typhoons and the 454s. But the one where I had this in high school, and I think I see this going to be one of the trucks that pops is, do you remember the Blazer, the two-door Blazer ZR2s?
Yes.
The lifted ones.
So those are the S10 Blazers, ZR2, yes. And you could get either the pickup truck, which was extended cab only, or the SUV version, which was a two-door Blazer that had a little triangular window on it. And they actually rode on their own chassis, separate from the other ones, because you can get BFG 31-inch tires on them. And they had Bilstein shocks. And they had a wide suspension, wide track. And so they had a different chassis. That's why they had those big fender flares over them. So those are one of the very first comprehensive off-road packages from the automakers.
And I would say if I could find one of those right now, I think they're completely undervalued and could create an immense amount of opportunity. Clean, low mileage is the key. Yeah. And especially post 1981, where you have standardized 17-digit VINs, the cleaner, the lower mileage, the lower the documented mileage, the better, the more value it's going to be. But if I could find one of those late 90s ZR2, S10 two-door Blazers, or the pickups, I think that's a truck you could pick up good and clean for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 right now, that in a couple years could be a $25,000, $30,000 truck easy.
Well, I'm happy to hear that you said the SRT 10s are undervalued because I've got some history with that truck. I love those things, and if there's one modern classic that I could have in my garage, it would be that truck. Those things were special. They had a 48-inch long shifter on them because you sat up so tall. I knew the chief engineer. We've had him on the podcast a long, long time ago, but I've got a lot of fond memories in that truck in particular. And the Lightnings are always cool. I actually like the non-supercharged 351 with the GT40 heads, the old OBS Lightnings. They weren't as fast, but they were just cool, especially if you got them in. I liked red. I like red vehicles. I think those ones are super rad. But it's nice to know that some of those, there's still a chance. There's still a chance to get a hold of one of those. And it's funny, I'll run across, like I said before, an SRT10 Ram, and I'll be shocked at where it sits price-wise, and it's like, I could almost afford one of those, And it's crossed my mind a few times, although my wife would be mad because she told me, because of all the different cars and crap that I own, she basically said, listen, the next thing that you get is what I want. And she goes, if you find one, you can just spend the money and you don't even have to ask me. And she wants a Honda Hatchie, like an 89, 90 Civic
that's
hatchback.
Awesome.
And she's like, and she wants it with a stick. And I'm like, let's get one with a B18, swap in it or something like that. And or a CRX of that era, CRX SI. She goes, no, I want a Hatchie. And so that I'm basically have been told, blank check, no questions asked, bring home a Hatchie, and we're good. So at some point when I get the right opportunity or the enough money in the bank account, that's going to show up in the driveway, and she's going to abscond with the keys, and I will never see it, and that's going to be okay.
So that's not my world, but I happen to, when that time comes, I happen to know somebody. There's another expert broker, which I do a lot of business with, and we share a lot of clients, and he specializes in non-JDM Japanese stuff. And in his personal collection, he has everything you just the Hondas that you just listed off. He has all of those in his personal collection with like no miles on it. No miles on it. Like, what's even crazier? He just picked up a Samurai, right? Do you remember the Suzuki Samurai?
So great.
With 7,000 original miles. He called me a couple weeks ago, and he's like, so I live in Charleston, South Carolina in the winters, and coastal New Jersey in the summers. And he called me a couple weeks ago, and he's like, Chris, I found a 7,000 mile Suzuki Samurai, 1987 Suzuki Samurai. This thing is too good to be true. It's in Charleston. Will you go put eyes on it just to make sure it's
Yes,
real?
I will.
I drove over there 10 minutes later, met the original owner.
What was the story? Why was it just like the vacation car?
So no, it actually, I love, trucks that have stories or vehicles that have stories. So this guy is a collector. He's a local collector here in Charleston, South Carolina, owns a very successful business that has a huge building where he could pack it with his collection, and a very eclectic collection. Everything from like right-hand drive, JDM, Iron Pig, 50 series Land Cruiser fire trucks to like, like so cool. To like, just crazy stuff. But he had purchased this vehicle. His daughter is about my age, in her mid-40s. And when she was younger, she was really into like ultralight, like midget sprint boats. So they were traveling all over to go to these races, and he wanted something cool that kind of was along the same lines as the boat to pull it with. And he bought in 1987 a Suzuki Samurai. They drove it to just pull this little like sprint ultralight boat around to races on the weekends. And then eventually she lost interest, wasn't racing anymore, and he kind of parked it in his collection, had it taken care of, and has had it from 1987 till January 2026, where I went, looked at it, put eyes on it, and another expert broker I know just picked it up and is enjoying it in his collection.
That is so cool. Those Sammys are awesome. They got a bad rap through the whole rollover thing. They didn't deserve the rap they got. They're highly coveted in the off-road world, especially for people who find the clapped out ones and they build little rock buggies out of them and stuff like that. And I remember one time there was it was four-wheeler club challenge. I can't remember what we called it. It was like the club version of Real Truck Club Challenge. He was the like daily driver kind of version of Top Truck Challenge. And one of my first events out in Attica, Indiana, as a journalist working for Four Wheeler, I was shooting this Samurai, and I got this great photo of it up on two wheels right in front of me. And I'm click, 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 click. Somebody grabs me, pulls me back, and the car lands sideways right where I was. And that was the first lesson I learned of not burying your eye in the lens and being aware of what's around you, because in the lens, it was great. Got some great shots right before it almost smashed me into a pancake. So, but that's just one of my many Samurai stories over the years. But those things are cool.
Yeah, they're cool. And again, they were ridden hard, they were modified, they were put away wet. So to find something low mileage in such good condition, I understand why he called me to go put eyes on it, because I wouldn't have, if I didn't look at it and walk around it, I wouldn't have thought it was real either.
Yeah.
But there's stuff out there buried in collections all over the country and now the world that you would be surprised still exists.
Well, Chris, this has been awesome. Where can people find you if they're looking for broker services or they need some insights on the market, things like that? Let the people know where to find you.
Hey, visit classic4x4.com. So it's classic, the number 4x, the number 4.com. I specialize in advising, marketing, and representing the sale of collector trucks and 4x4s. So if you have a collector truck or 4x4, whether you have one in your garage or a full collection, and you want somebody to handle every aspect of the sale from valuation to final sale and everything in between to make sure that you're getting the most money you possibly can with the least amount of hassle, feel free to reach out. And if you're interested in my market insights, though the podcast I've wrapped because I'm so busy with the business and my clients,
which is a good thing,
and representing their trucks. Yeah, but
I can't wait to get so busy where I don't have to podcast anymore. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. But we need great members of the community like yourself to continue these things on. But check out the Classic 4x4 YouTube channel. I will be posting quarterly updates, market updates, where I'll be reviewing the past quarter or the past year, and also checking out the outlook and discussing the outlook of the collector truck and 4x4 markets. So you can check those out on YouTube, and you can check it out. There's also a tab on my website at classic4x4.com.
Well, we love it. Would love to have you come back and keep talking about this stuff. So stay in touch if there's anything in the market that's worth talking about or interesting or changes, or maybe we have some questions for you. But we'd love to have you back on, and just really appreciate your time. These are the best kinds of conversations because it's just two truck guys talking about trucks, and I'm sure people listening are going, yeah, it's awesome. I really appreciate it.
And it's always great seeing you when we get to cross paths at SEMA every year, and it's always great talking to you. And I thank you so much for having me on the podcast today.
Well, let's do it again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you to Chris. That's one of my favorite interviews of late because, like I said, it's just a couple of guys talking trucks for an hour. My favorite thing to do. Let me know what you think, and if you'd love for Chris to come back more often, let me know that too, or if you've got specific questions for him, happy to pass them along. All right, looks like the answering machine light is blinking, so let's check in with the 5-star hotline before we say goodbye.
Oh, come on and be part of the show called the 5-star hotline. 657-205-6105. It's the 5-star hotline. 5-star hotline.
Hey, Holman. It's Kevin from Texas. Currently, I'm in Arizona driving from Phoenix down to Tucson. Went through the rental car company and got myself a 25 four-door Rubicon. Now, this is going to be a truck review.
Tell us all about your truck. Ooh. Is it great or does it suck? Before I buy, I need a clue. Don't pull punches, you review. You review.
Okay? So, I haven't driven a Jeep since my 97 TJ, 35-inch tires, 4-banger, 5-speed, 456 gears. That was my last experience in a Jeep, and I can tell you, like right now, I drive a 3/4-ton Chevy Duramax, and I tell you, this Jeep rides so much better than that. It's probably a little bit louder in the cab than my truck is. It's got plenty of pep and go. Probably not like your V8, but darn, it has so much. It's comfortable. All the accoutrements.
The accoutrement that you will need. Accoutrement?
Here, all the parameters, right, are all mounted.
Mounter, monitor, key, engine, parameters.
It's a great vehicle. I don't know what I've been missing. I think that if I ever need, a sport utility vehicle or something like that, man, I really think I would consider getting back into a Jeep. I just forgot how much darn fun these things are. It's really cool. Hey, on a side note, Holden, I'm glad you're still with us, brother. Seems like you're thriving. You're doing good. We can all look at you and the adversity that you faced, and we can put that back in our lives. Man, hey, 5 stars. Keep it going. I'll holler at you later, brother.
5-star review! 5 stars!
And that's a U review from Texas. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, the Jeeps are so much fun to drive. In fact, we should have lighting on because his wife just got one because she wanted something fun. And so now he's asking me all the questions. What do we do to it now? But the thing is if you haven't been in one, they're really refined. And they ride great for being on solid axles. The capability is unbelievable. But just even, for us here in California, I can go down PCH, pop the top, roll down the windows, and it's just fun. It's got this upright seating position, good visibility, sun shining in, wind in your hair, or in my case, my beard, and it's just super enjoyable. So I appreciate your review of the Jeep. I love when you guys call on the show and do reviews. I think that is so awesome. So I really appreciate it, and I'm going to give you 5 stars for that review.
Congratulations, you have earned 5 stars.
Hey, was there somebody who made a backup camera, say like from 5 or 6 different positions, so that an interface could be developed to lead you to be able to back up right to the hitch? And thank you very much. Steve Hayes, Gentry, Arkansas.
Hey, Steve, thanks for your question. I believe it's Chevy that has that as an option on their Silverados with the different views. Can't remember if Ram or Ford have that. One of them does, or maybe they all do now. There's also a company out there that makes backup camera systems that are pretty flexible. So I would look up Gentex is one of those. I'm not sure how far they've gotten. I know they were doing some aftermarket camera systems, but there's a lot of options out there. Maybe not exactly the way that you envision it, but probably pretty close.
Morning. This is Grant calling from Iowa. I haven't called in for a while, but then I found myself in a truck-related pickle that I need your extensive wisdom on. So last week I decided to take a nap while going down a gravel road in my truck. I'm fine. But as I kind of just eased her in the ditch, and my side curtain airbags went off. That is literally the only thing that happened. The fronts didn't deploy, no other damage that I can see. But I mean, they never even quit running. I drove her to the body shop and just got the estimate back. It's going to be $16,000 to repair it. Headliner, side curtain airbags. I guess got to pop the windshield out to do it on this 2017 Ram of mine. So basically, my question is, I mean, they're only going to give me $15,000 if I decide to pound it, but in order to buy something, maybe a little bit nicer in that sort of used truck space of a 2017 or newer Ram, I mean, you're looking at another $15,000 to $20,000 to $25,000 on top of what they're giving me to replace it. So I guess my question is it worth fixing? I mean, this thing I've had for 5 years now. It's got no rust. 135,000 miles. I mean, it was a great farm truck. It's got the long bed. I love that about it. And I'm fine. There's plenty of Ram trucks out there that would be suitable, but is it worth shelling out that much money or just repairing the one that I got? So, be interested to know what your take is on all that. And yeah, look forward to hearing your answer. Keep up the good work. Thanks.
Well, that's a tough one. Is it a 1500 or is it a 2500 or 3500? That probably makes a difference, especially the engine. If it's one of the older diesels that you have, I would probably say that's probably not a bad one to repair because it's so expensive to get into a new diesel plus all the after treatment. If it's a gas truck, maybe it's your opportunity now to get you another truck that'll give you another 135,000 plus miles on it. And the new ones do have lane keep assist, so they'll keep you out of the ditch if you decide to take a road nap. That's a tough one. I can't believe it's that expensive. I mean, maybe it is. To me, I would have thought maybe $5,000, but I guess I don't know how much the modules are. I would get a second opinion first. So typically the way insurance works is they'll tell you where to go. Like, hey, we have these certified shops, but you can take it to wherever you want to go. I would, if you haven't done it already, I'm assuming maybe you haven't, would take it to an independent if you've taken it to the dealer or vice versa, and just see what the repair cost estimates will be. You may find yourself being able to get a couple grand lower than that, but that's a tough one. I would have to know more about your situation to tell you one way or the other. I think I would probably say start with a new one if you can afford it, or a newer one. Get some miles out of it, and you don't have to worry about any hidden damage. But if anybody else has any comments on it, why don't you give us a call, 657-205-6105, or send us an email, truckshowpodcast@gmail.com. And Grant, good luck. Whatever you do, I hope you'll call back and let us know, because we're going to be riveted to this, hanging on for the suspense of where you go with this. But let us know for sure. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Truck Show Podcast. How sad, right? We spent an hour together, talk about trucks. We have some good guests on the phone, and then it just ends. It's like summer camp's over.
The Truck Show, the Truck Show, the Truck Show.
Except summer camp is not over, because summer's just beginning. So we got lots more Truck Show Podcast episodes in front of us. Send me your thoughts by emailing the show, truckshowpodcast@gmail.com, or following us on social @Truck Show Podcast or @Sean P. Holman. Of course, you can be a part of the show by leaving a message on the 5-star hotline, 657-205-6105. And please join the Facebook group, the Podshed Insiders. And also, when you join it, or if you're already a member, go in there, take a look at Rich from Hollister's GoFundMe. And if you can find some kindness in your back pocket, maybe throw a few bucks his way to help rebuild his business and shop. It was his livelihood. And he's a super, super generous and kind and proud man. And he would never ask for help. But we want to rally the community around him. Even Lightning had a conversation with him the other day. Rich and I were texting, but maybe we'll have Jay back to talk about it and get you guys motivated to give him a little help. All right, got to thank our sponsors, AMSOIL.com, for those of you who love your vehicles and want the best synthetics, oil change kits, car care products, and merch. Don't forget to head to AMSOIL.com to see what the current promotion is. Right now, it's it just ended. The spend $100 or more by June 16th to get yourself the 10mm emergency socket kit. Just ended yesterday. So I guess we're going to have to hang on and see what the next promotion is, but I'll let you guys know. Of course, if you're buying something, please go to truckshowpodcast.com under featured products and use the AMSOIL link under that tab. And that way the show gets credit for it. Also, awesome knives at a great price. Kershaw, which can be found at kershaw.kaiusa.com. And the best in high-quality adventure gear, lifestyle, and vehicle reviews, only found in the pages of OVR Magazine. Get free access to our digital library for a year, or discount on print by heading to OVRmag.com and using the code @TruckShowPodcast. As always, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I look forward to doing it again real soon.
The Truck Show Podcast is a production of Truck Famous LLC. This podcast was created by Sean Holman and Jay Tillis, hosted by Sean Holman, and uses production elements by DJ Omar Khan and Jay Tillis. If you like what you've heard, please open your Apple Podcast or Spotify app and leave us a 5-star review. And if you're a fan, there's no better way to support the show than by sharing it and patronizing our sponsors. Some vehicles may have been harmed during the making of this podcast.
The Truck Show, which rhymes with,